My name is Margaret Devaney. I left my home in Kilmakeown, County Sligo, Ireland, myself and two girlfriends, Delia Burns, a neighbour, and Kitty Hargadon from another village. I was 19, they 16 and 15. My father took us to the railroad station in Ballysadare on April 10th, where we got the train that took us to Queenstown. We stayed overnight in Queenstown and boarded Titanic at noonday on the 11th. Everything was beautiful. Food was good, times were good, everything about it was, well, out of this world compared to what some boats had to offer. Sunday evening, that would be the 14th, we were out on deck where we had music, Irish music. And about 10 o'clock we went downstairs, Delia and myself to our room. Kitty had been seasick, so we went down to be with her. By and by we went to bed. Everything seemed very normal, beautiful weather, the sea was calm. About 11:30, I think it would be, we heard this crash. It didn't seem terrible. The only thing about it was the engine stopped, and aboard ship, when the engines stop, you know there was some trouble. So we got out of bed and got dressed. A friend of me father's, Henry Hart from Ballysadare, came to our room to say to me that something had happened and I would want to go up on deck. So he and I went up on deck, but it was bitter cold. We couldn't stay there. We came back down and got into the hall leading to our stateroom, 163 on the E-deck, and there was an officer telling everyone to get their life belts on. We went to our stateroom and got our belts on, and we packed our bags and left the room and came up on deck. Delia, Kitty and I decided we would walk across the deck to get to the next deck. So when we got there, that's when we threw down our suitcases. We had to climb a ladder, and the entrance gate, which was about 4 feet high, was locked against us, so we had to climb over that. Getting in on that deck, Kitty, the seasick girl, was very sick, so she said she couldn't go any further, and Delia stayed with her. I thought, well, I had an idea I would run along and see if there were any lifeboats. So I ran along until I came out onto an open deck. Nobody told anyone, nobody'd tell you where to go and not to go. It was the men they stopped, but you didn't get any information on what to do. There were a lot of people, men mostly, and a boat ready to be lowered, so I asked a man if I could go in and he said yes. But then they looked in the boat and they said there were too many in that boat. She'll flounder as soon as she hits the water, he said. The officer noticed there were 2 men in the boat and he said, if you don't get out, I'll shoot. He said, I'm not going in this boat myself. And they got out and someone sort of flopped me in. So they started to lower the boat, and it was then that it was catching on the side of Titanic, and being nearest to it, we had to stand up and push to free her. Now we got down on the water, but we can't move as the oars are lashed together with heavy rope, and the cry went up through the boat, does anybody have a knife? I happened to have this small knife my brother John had given me as I was leaving home, and I had it in my pocket because at Sunday dinner they put some fruit on the table, but we had to hurry out to the dining saloon for there was a second seating. I had gone to my room and got this knife so we could peel the apples and such as we had, and I had it in my pocket later on. So mine was the knife that cut the ropes that tied the oars. Otherwise we could not have got away from Titanic's side, and as she was soon to founder, we would surely be sucked down with her. We got on the ocean and we saw her, beautifully lighted, but then the lights started to go out, and after a time we heard explosions, which the men said was the water reaching the boilers. Then it sounded as like she had fallen apart, and everyone was on the ocean. The screams and the cries were terrible. The people hit the water, the cold water. The people were all drowning then with her. I said my rosary for their suffering. I think we were the second boat to get rescued. Carpathia had stopped and they lowered their lifeboat and attached it to the side, and then they put a rope under your arms and they walked up this ladder, and when you got to the top there were 2 men there, and that's where they took your life vest, and then they took you to a room where they had refreshments for us. And that room, that was where some met up after being parted for a while, but oh, so many. It was dark when we came to the pier, Carpathia's pier. We saw a lot of caskets, and there were nurses and doctors running round. See, nobody had told this country what condition anybody on board was in. While I was standing at the pier looking down at all of this man came and tipped me on the shoulder, and I couldn't imagine who he was or what he was. But he did it a second time, and then he said, I have something for you. He said, you know, upstairs, he said, they're breaking the boats apart just for souvenirs. Then he said, I got this for you. He said, you did a lot to save our lives. It was the man I had given the knife to. I'd never seen him that night, as dark as it was, and how he knew me I don't know. But wrapped in a paper was the flag off the lifeboat.